is, thank you, being recorded, and we'll send this out to everyone afterwards. So, um, all the information is mostly online as well. So, okay, getting started. So, just to ground us before we really dive into it, always want to mention that we are presenting tonight from native land, and this is something that we've really tried to incorporate thus far and moving forward into the museum's programming as well as the physical space. So you can see a beautiful mural on the right, on the physical public housing building, and here's just like a one map that shows you some of the native land that we currently occupy. So Chicago, also known as Jigoganak, was and is and will always be native land. Here at the intersection of several great waterways, this land naturally became a site of travel, trade, and healing for many tribes who have and continue to steward this land and water. We present tonight with gratitude and solidarity with the Potawatomi, the primary stewards of this land, the Ojibwe and Odawa, who frequently traveled in, traded in, and connected with the land, the many other tribes who traveled and traded in the area, including the Ho-Chunk, the Iowa, the Menominee, Meskwaki, Sauk, Miamia, Wiyah, Piankashaw, Kickapoo, Oto, and Alaini peoples, as well as all indigenous peoples who are the past, current, and future caretakers of the land. You can learn more about what land you occupy at this link that I'm putting in the chat, nativeland.ca. Oh, Mark's already got it. And just want to give a shout out to John Lau. He is a Potawatomi scholar in the Chicago area, and he's one of the many people that we have been working with on our land acknowledgement. Just going to mute you, Latanya, just so it doesn't make it hard to hear. And then, yeah, you all probably know who we are at the National Public Housing Museum if you're here tonight. But just in case you don't know what we're about, our mission is to preserve, promote, and propel the right of all people to a place where they can live and prosper, a place to call home. And we're very excited. We just had our grand opening this past weekend. So, we've had some renderings in the past, but this is the real museum here. Beautiful, super graphic on the last remaining home of the Jane Addams homes. And this is on our second floor. It's called the Timuel Black Recording Studio. So we got a wonderful setup now on the second floor of the museum to record oral histories, record podcasts, and hopefully some of you will be able to use the space too. This is going to be a community use space that people can loan out for a day if they're working on their own creative project, even if you don't attend the Beauty Turner Academy this summer. But definitely glad to have lots of folks interested tonight in the Academy. So just a brief agenda. We're going to try to get out of here in an hour or less. So here's just what we'll go over. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about kind of what is oral history, in case you are not familiar with that that term, and who is Beauty Turner, the person. We'll talk, give you the overview of the Beauty Turner Academy this year, the application process and what we're kind of looking for in applications. And then we'll end with a couple of FAQs, frequently asked questions, and open the floor for folks to ask questions as well. And if you have any questions, while we're going, you can also put those in the chat. And Mark, who is our wonderful program events coordinator, helping out with the back end tonight, Mark will put those together to make sure we get back to them. All right. Okay, so let's start with the basics, right? Beauty Turner Academy of Oral History. What is oral history? Lots of people, have their own versions of what that definition is, but these are just kind of some of the top level things based on how we teach it. So oral history at its core is about first person narratives telling a story from your perspective, a story of history from your perspective. How did you experience that history? You, as a narrator, are the expert of your own story, and no one can take that away from you, even if your perspective differs from other people. That's actually something that we try to lean into at the Beauty Turner Academy, is the idea that, you know, everyone's going to have their own perspectives on historical events, and that we would rather have a constellation of perspectives than just one perspective. And that's also, you know, a big part of how we approach history as a whole at the museum. We talk a lot about, and we put a lot of emphasis on relationship building within oral history. And some of the phrases you might hear us talking about is moving at the speed of trust. So, you know, we want to make sure that this is a process that is collaborative and that feels good for the people who are participating. We are not journalists, and we're not trying to be journalists. So, you know, a journalist might want to try to put you on the spot with some question, but that's not what oral history is about. Oral history is about sharing or creating authority together between the oral historian and the narrator. And then the last kind of bullet point I really wanted to touch on tonight was being trauma informed. This is a really important part of our curriculum. We actually have a ton of resources online about kind of trauma informed care within the context of oral history, you know, particularly with the focus of our museum and our program on the stories of public housing residents. Sometimes there's trauma involved in that, and it's not the whole story, but it's part of it for a lot of people. And so we want to make sure that we are approaching this process together in a way that is mindful of the trauma that might come up. You know, a lot of times in oral history, you don't even think or expect something to bring something up, but then when you're actually telling the story to someone, you know, you might get choked up, or you might have a little bit of flashback or something like that. So we really try to approach things from a trauma-informed perspective. And then, you know, we got this graphic on the right. This is from our very first year of BTA. We have this wonderful partner named Brandon Black, and he draws as people talk, and he kind of makes a super graphic of how a conversation goes. And so this is a portion from our very first year, everyone kind of summarizing what they got out of the program. And this is one of the things that they talked about. And I think this illustrates it so beautifully, you know, centering stories within the context of how it happened, and you know, what's the second layer and the third layer behind the sort of mainstream narrative, really wanting to tell these stories without erasing anyone's perspective, and being really authentic with it. So that's a little bit about oral history. And then the second part of the name of the program is Beauty Turner. Some of y'all in the audience might already know Beauty Turner. A lot of people in Chicago knew Beauty Turner when she was alive. She was a Robert Taylor Homes resident for 14 years. She was a lot of different things. She was a community activist and a writer, you know, first and foremost, or I guess a mother first and foremost. She was a poet. She had a blog, and she had something called the Ghetto Bus Tours. This was an acronym that she created. She started these in the mid 2000s, and it stands for Greatest History Ever Told to Our People. And rather than, you know, me just talking about it, we actually have a little bit of an audio clip to play for you. The beginning is a little quieter, and then it gets a little bit more clear, because the beginning is it's actually her, Beauty, talking during one of her bus tours. So I'm gonna start playing this, and then we're also gonna put the transcript in the chat just in case it's a little bit hard to hear. Oh, Latanya! Oh my gosh! Hello. Larry's told me about you a little bit. Great to have you here. Okay, I'm gonna.
So I brought you to this open field because I want you to keep an open mind concerning the residents of public housing. I want you to look around This is once where 28 public housing high-rises stood in the Barbatella area, 16 stories high. Tens of thousands of low-income people used to dwell here.
With this $1.6 billion CHA transformation plan, with the relocating of low-income residents, people need to actually see, as those buildings come down, where the people are going to, what's happening with them, what's the morale of the people. This tour actually shows those things. Plus, at the end of the day, when I take you to the ghetto gallery, you get to see some of the pictures of what it was like there, what happened at the different events, the playing of the children playing basketball and jumping rope. It was just like a normal community. It was a community.
My mom started out, she was just an individual who really wanted to try to make a difference, but she wasn't quite sure of her confidence level at the certain point when she started. She was like into writing poetry, she would write beautiful words, and she would with words of encouragement, try to be there for people, and she would pretty often write the stuff, like do a little list of what she wanted to write, and she would ball it up. I would go over to it and I would be nosy, as most kids often are, pick it up and see what she had going on her paperwork, just reading, and I would read these beautiful words, and she didn't feel as if they was worthy for the public yet. I would secretly take her paperwork that she had and send it out to the newspaper, and they actually would love her work. So she pretty much started getting people inquiring, calling. She would think it was a joke, and they really wanted to hear from her. So when she would take her paperwork and go from there, and they started calling her and talking to her, she saw a need for people to be able to fight for their rights and have a voice, because she used to call herself the voice of the voiceless. I used to think it was like profound, because I'm like, how can somebody who don't speak up for themselves have a voice? She said, that's why I step in. I speak for those who want to speak and say the things that they wish that they could say. So she was actually a beautiful person in that way. So if I really think about what all she did for the people, she gave them an opportunity to stand up for themselves. I think when my mom started, she was just trying to give the ghetto deeper meaning than what it was. She wanted it to be positive. She wanted it to be something unique, and she wanted it to be something profound. Because most people think a ghetto is deprived, not having anything. She wanted to bring back the hope to the people. She wanted to show them something different, but then she also didn't want to forget where she was coming from. She wanted to actually utilize something that would be so profound and so negative to make a real difference. So that's how she came up with it. She got tired of hearing the stereotypes. She got tired of the negativity. She got tired of people just looking down on her home. It's like anywhere you live in the city, nobody want to be looked down on. So it's all about respect. That's what she wanted, to give them some dignity and respect. Remember my thing I had said, the voice of the voiceless? She wanted to give them a voice. She put it together because she felt like it was a need for it. And that all went back to not wanting to be homeless, not showing their experience of what people went through, and actually try to show you a different understanding of the people of this development. That's why she started.
That was Larry Turner, Miss Beauty's eldest son, and Miss Latanya's is in the chat. I'm gonna be emailing you. I'm gonna find your email through our registration so we can bang on your email and interview as well if you want. Okay. And these are just a couple of photos from her blog of kind of teaching people, right? This is what used to be on this land. And I also love this photo on the right because it really shows how Miss Beauty led this amazing event or this amazing effort, but it was also about not just her being on the microphone, but also handing that microphone over to other people and letting them share their honest experiences, the positive and the challenging. So,
Hello.
oh, hello, Miss Lori. Okay, Mark's got you. Okay, I'm gonna now tell you a little bit about the actual program itself. Okay, so, and these are kind of the main things that we really try to focus on when we are designing the curriculum. So oral history is something that, people do at a scholarly level. It's something that they do in their everyday lives. And we really want to focus on, that second group, right? Like if people want to, they can go and do something scholarly with this training. But we really want this training to be accessible and applicable to the everyday person, to just give them another tool in their tool belt to kind of work with their community, engage their community, empower their community. We stay focused on public housing communities, stories, and agencies. So really just wanting to make sure we're grounding it in this community. It's about developing skills. So you'll learn things like, you know, how do you write an interview guide? How do you prepare to interview someone? How do you use recording equipment? But it's also about personal development. And we actually have a graduate of the program in the audience, Alexandra. She's going to be one of our mentors this year. So I'm sure she and lots of other people could tell you about sort of the personal development side of things. One of the big aspects of oral history is deep listening. So just becoming a better listener. That's something that you'll hopefully build as a skill in the academy. Oh, see, it's right there, deep listening. And then lastly, it is paid. So we give everyone a stipend for participating. You also will get an equipment starter pack. So you'll get some different gear shipped to you for you to start on your journey as an oral historian. And there's also, I'm not going to kind of go into the whole nuts and bolts of the entire program, but this summer training is kind of the first of 3 phases in the Beauty Turner Academy. So once you finish that first phase, you can kind of continue on with some of the later phases, which are also paid. And you can even, you know, have some future employment opportunities if you continue with that, and if you're liking doing it. I think, you know, a lot of folks know, and if you don't already know, now you will know that we have an archive of oral history stories. We have like about 170 at this point. We're working on building up what is available to the public. We have about 20 on our website right now. And we get asked by all sorts of people to access the archive, whether they're scholars or they're students, or we've had some like filmmakers get in touch with us. They want to make sure that they are being as historically accurate as possible, and so they consult the archive. So we need people to be working in that archive, to be collecting new interviews, to be you know, doing there's the interview portion, but you also have to do a lot of work afterwards in terms of transcription. So all of those are jobs that we try as much as possible to have folks from within the public housing community do that work and get paid to do that important memory work. So to get into the nitty gritty for this summer and for what to expect if you were to participate this year, like I said, there are 2 more phases. We're not really going to talk about those too much tonight, but the main entry point that you got to do first before anything else is the summer training. So this is, you know, the ins and outs of oral history. It's 11 weeks, meeting for 2 hours per week on Zoom. And then we give you some suggested activities, you know, 1 to 3 hours of work between sessions. We really encourage you to do this work. There's not going to be like homework checks per se, but really the more that you put into the program, the more that you get out of it. So we have those resources and exercises for y'all to do in between our weekly sessions. And then we have that, like I mentioned, the stipend and an audio kit for you to keep forever. Whether you work for the museum afterwards or not, it doesn't matter. That audio kit is yours to keep. And then, like I teased a little bit, we have 2 what we call apprenticeships after this initial summer training, where you get to just have a little bit more hands-on practice, more, you know, one-on-one support to actually go through every stage of the oral history process. And ideally, at the end of each of these, you have something in the archive that you've worked on that gets preserved. Okay. All right. So that's the academy for the summer. And oh, I forgot to mention, we'll be running pretty much through the summer months. So we start the week of June 9th, and then we go through the end of August. We're going to pick the exact day of the week with the cohort that gets selected. So we don't have a day of the week yet, but it's part of the application that we ask you a little bit about your availability. And then as we start to kind of finalize the cohort, we talk more about that scheduling to make sure that we're working with as many people's availability as possible. And then there's also 1 week that we take off in that span. Okay, so this little diagram is just showing you a little bit about our application process. We're here, we're a week into May, so the written application is open and online. Mark will pop that into the chat when they have a chance. It's an online form. And I would say it'll take you about 2 hours. We have gotten a couple of applications in already, which is really exciting. But do take your time with it, because we do tend to get a fair amount of applications, and we want to make sure that we're getting, as much information as you want to share with us to help decide who's going to be in that cohort. So we start with a written application. If you're like, oh, writing really isn't my thing, you can also do like a little video or even an audio clip of you answering those questions. All that information is on the How to Apply page online. As we get those applications in, this is new, we're gonna be doing some short interviews with all of the people who have a strong application. And the interview is really just to help us get a better idea of who you are as a person, how you show up, in a virtual Zoom-based space. That'll go through the first week of May. As we get in those applications, we'll start sort of looking at them, inviting people to apply. If we get some really strong applications, we'll put those aside. And then that'll go through May 11th, and then hoping to start notifying those who have been selected May 12th, maybe 13th, early May, mid-May. Try to get that locked down. We're going to have about 10 people in the cohort this summer. And then we have some sort of logistics that we want to make sure we get set before the summer training starts. So, getting you into our payment system, getting your addresses and shipping you, all the educational material, that kind of stuff, matching you with a mentor. So everyone's going to be matched with one of our faculty members. So we have a bunch of mentors. Most of the mentors are also going to be facilitating at least 1 week of the program. So we have a kind of integrated faculty. And then we'll get started, like I said, the week of June 9th, and that'll go through the rest of the summer. So those are the stages. I'm gonna just make sure we got this link in the chat for the a lot of this information. Oh, Mark's got it. It didn't give me a notification, but thank you for being on top of that, Mark. Okay, this is a long-ish list, but we try to be as kind of transparent as possible for what are we actually looking for in that application that kind of makes us put it aside and say, hey, this is someone who we want to work with. So this list, we make a rubric based off this list, and all of that there's even more details about how we go through our application process on the website in case you're interested at the link that Mark shared. So first and foremost, we focus on people connected to public housing. We put the most emphasis on people who have lived experience themselves in public housing, but we do also take people who have some other connection to public housing into the cohort. So we have definitely had a number of people who have family who lived in public housing. So a lot of people's parents or grandparents or maybe siblings, that sort of thing. We want to make sure that, you know, the people who are participating and who get selected for the program are going to make the most of that training and that kind of time and energy investment that we're putting into folks. So we want people who are really interested in the power of narrative and storytelling as methods of resistance and change. We're ideally looking for people who are already active in their communities, or maybe they are kind of just starting to get active in their communities, or they're looking for more tools to help them get active in their communities. We are really hoping that this program is not just something that's a benefit to you individually, but is something that you'll also, you know, share with your community at large. We do have an intergenerational cohort, and it's also a national cohort. So we want folks who are, you know, willing and open to working to build those generative relationships with people who are different from them. So people from different parts of the country, from different age groups. We've really found that having this diversity of, you know, backgrounds helps everyone, right? We all have things to learn from each other and things to teach each other. As I mentioned before, we would love to have people who have that time in their schedule to really commit every week to like 3 hours at minimum, you know, maybe up to 5, but 3 hours. So that's 2 hours for the Zoom sessions and then 1 hour of, you know, journaling, listening sessions, little bit of reading, but we try to not assign too much reading towards the program for 11 weeks. And then lastly, this kind of is similar to number 2, but interested in long-term engagement with this practice of oral history, whether that's as someone who's doing oral histories, or maybe you're just applying, maybe you are applying those techniques and skills to something else. So we have one person who's actually a staff member of the museum now who is an artist. They are a poet, they are a filmmaker, and they use oral history to help them with both of those practices. We actually have a number of people who are writers or poets connected to the program. So we're really, again, hoping that this is something that can kind of be like a trampoline for you and your other practices, whether that's history related, storytelling, narrative change, creative work. It's all good. We just want to see those connections of how you can use this for those different things. Okay, so that's kind of it for my like main portion of the presentation. I'm gonna kind of quickly go through a couple of frequently asked questions that we get from people. Now is also a great time if you have your own questions that are starting to come up to put those in the chat. And then I'll make sure to get to those. Okay, so common question, we're a museum based in Chicago. Do you have to live in Chicago to participate? No, you don't. We are national cohort, like I said. So we've had someone from as far away as Hawaii. We actually had someone who was based in Brazil while they were doing the training. We do strongly prefer to have someone to have the cohort be US based just from like logistical standpoint, but like I said, we really encourage geographical variety and diversity. So, you know, if you have friends from out of state and you want to tell them about this program, please do. And this is also, I'll just mention, you know, we want to have a national cohort because we want our archive to be national. Public housing residents have similarities and differences based on where they live, and we want that to be represented in our archive. So again, kind of referring back to that list of desired qualities, part of what we're hoping is that people have those community relationships, and then they are able to use those community relationships to document public housing history from their own communities. Oh. Okay, another question is about age range. So like, is this only for youth, or maybe it's only for adults? Do I have to be some sort of age? No, like I mentioned, we have an intergenerational cohort. So whether you're an elder, you're midlife, you're young, we would love to have you be a part of this. We did find kind of from our first year that ideally it works best if folks are kind of mid-teens and older, just because of, the time and energy commitment. We want to make sure that you feel like you're someone who can make that commitment for 11 weeks. So that's kind of our suggested start age. But that being said, I was one of those young self-starters, so I totally get that the number of your age doesn't say everything about who you are as a person and your capacity for work and commitment and creativity. So if you're younger than 16, or someone who's younger than 16 who's still really interested in participating, just reach out to me and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about kind of why do we have that parameter, and do you think that you're able to kind of still take on that long-term commitment, even as a young person? All right. Okay, so the next question is about lived experience, right? So is it only public housing residents who are qualified? Do I have to be a current resident? What's the deal there? So as I said, we do focus on people with current or past lived experience in public housing. We define public housing broadly for the purpose of this and for the archive. So it's any form of housing that is subsidized by the government, whether that's kind of traditional public housing, you have a voucher, you live in a mixed income site, all of those count as lived experience for us. That being said, you can have a lived experience with something and not have lived in it yourself. So if you have other connections to public housing, we will also consider your application. You'll see if you look at our rubric that we do put a little bit more weight on folks with direct lived experience, but we also have had a lot of great folks come through the program who have other meaningful connections and who are just as committed to this sort of narrative change work because of how they are meaningfully connected to public housing. So it's definitely not a hard and fast requirement. We do just like to be transparent about kind of that component of it. Okay, will there be homework? Good question. So this is similar to what I said earlier, right? The more that you put into the program, the more you're going to get out of it. So because of that, we really would like folks to have at least try to, put in some of that work in between sessions. It's not a ton, right? Like I said, we're not expecting you to do more than 3 hours. If you do 1 hour a week, that's great. That's amazing. And these are some of the types of things that we assign in kind of descending order. So listening activities, we're doing oral history, so there's a lot of listening, ideally. We are in the midst of editing our BTA workbook, which is going to have some journal prompts and some other kind of writing prompts for you to reflect on what you've learned and synthesize all the different things that you've learned that week, and how does it connect to the other weeks, and how does it connect to your community and your lived experience and your identities. So as I mentioned, we do have a rubric. We do kind of put a little bit more weight on folks who are able to make that time commitment. It's not going to completely, rule you out if you're like, hey, I do have a busy life. And we really appreciate when folks are upfront about that. But again, just trying to be transparent about how we make this selection from all the applicants. And then this is a really important question that I wish we had a better answer. So we are committed as much as possible to accommodating our processes for folks who have limits on their monthly income for government benefits. I'm just going to be honest and say, like, we don't have a perfect workaround for this, especially for folks who are really, really concerned about, adhering to those requirements. We have had people in the past with these kind of monthly income requirements, and we've done gift cards. We have broken the stipend up into smaller chunks, so it's not one big amount at once. We want to work with you as much as we can to make it work for your situation. So if you're worried about this, I would say still apply, and we will cross that bridge when we come to it. We are aware that this is something that is, an issue for some people, and we wanna work with you as much as we can. Okay, that's it for my FAQs. So I'll just open the floor for any questions that folks have.
Hi, everyone. This is Leah. And
Hello.
for the information, just want to clarify the information in the informal interview for applicants. About how long are those interviews?
Oh yeah. Sorry, you're kind of hard to hear, but I think you asked how long the interviews are. They'll be half an hour or less, probably closer to 20 minutes. So, like I said, it's more of a just kind of like conversation, to get a sense of probably mostly going over some of the same information as in the written application, but just going into it a little bit more. Good
Thank
question.
you.
Yes. I'm seeing a question in the chat about the Zoom meetings. So we pick the time with the cohort. We do give options for afternoon or evening. I would like both years that we've done it thus far, there's been a much stronger preference for the evening. So both years have been in the evening. It's not out of the question that it would be during the day. It's just based on kind of what everyone's schedules are.
Hi, Lou.
Hi.
I am looking very forward to being a part of this process.
Yay.
I myself was a product of public housing. And my mother, who was one of the community reps for over 40 years, she advocated for the people of her development.
That's beautiful.
I've got stories to tell. I'm ready for you, Lou. I hope you're ready for me. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Miss Lori. I'm really looking forward to it. And
Thank
again, I don't know if you're one of those people. We've gotten 3 applications thus far, which is really exciting. I'm gonna reach out to those folks and just and let y'all know that if you want to add anything, like early bird gets the worm for sure. But if you want to add anything after you submit something, just email me. I'm very flexible. Want to make sure that you get everything in the application that you want in there.
Okay, I started the application process, but I'm not sure if it went through because
Okay.
I remember beauty. I remember beauty.
Yes. It's really beautiful. Just as a side note, like there's been so many people who I have met through this job who just like know her, and I think that's such a testament to who she was as an organizer. That it's been close to 20 years since she transitioned,
Yeah,
and her legacy is
yeah.
still so alive. Yeah, it's really beautiful. No pun intended. Um,
Yeah, there were a strong group of women that came through with Broody, and they taught the children under them. So we picked up a legacy that we feel, we picked up a choice that we don't want to let go out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just gonna uplift something in the chat, which is that feel free to share the video with anyone who wasn't here tonight. We'll have it. We're gonna directly email it to you all, and then it'll kind of be on the website on that application page. Um, all right. I'm gonna let folks continue to mull on if they have any questions. I just want to give a little bit of a promo plug. I didn't make a slide for this, so I'm just grabbing the link. We have another BTA event this week, 2 days from now on Thursday. I mentioned Alexandra, who I think is still in the crowd. She is going to be one of our wonderful BTA alumni who are going to share out. Yes. Hey, Alexandra. Mark, do you want to pin Alexandra just so people can see her? Alexandra is going to share out just like one of the most beautiful things that I think can happen, which is empowering people to like lead their own projects after doing this training. So please come on Thursday. Alexandra, this is Cedric. We got 2 other alumni as well. It's going to be a beautiful event, and folks are going to share different projects that they've done using their BTA training. So that's going to be in 2 days. I think Mark's putting this link in the chat. Thank you, Jamila, for joining us. All right. And then I'm going to, unless there are any other questions, I'm going to let us all get going. Okay, I see this other question. Okay, so I'm not going to say who this is, but we had a DM question about kind of being in a precarious position and not knowing fully how to answer some questions. So like if there's any question on there, like we do ask a question about your current like housing, for example. You can always, I think on almost any question, you can say other and then just put it in the very last question, your answer. So if there's any questions like that you're struggling with, you can do that, or you can just email me and just let me know what the situation is, and we'll talk about how to go from there. Okay, well, this is the last slide. Apply to the Academy. It's an easy link. This link will take you to a whole page with some information. Oh yes, thank you, Tiff. Tiff is our wonderful associate director. I meant to mention this earlier. The clip that we played earlier of Miss Beauty and Larry is actually from our most recent podcast episode. It's all about Beauty Turner and her life. It's includes lots of different oral history interviews and other sources. So we're really proud of that episode, and please go check it out if you want to learn more about this, wonderful community leader. All right, thank you everyone for being here. I'm gonna just put my email in the chat one more time.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, it took me all evening to see how to talk to you. Hi, first of all. You see my name is Goldsmith.
Yes.
Oh, okay then. Okay, I've been listening to you all for the longest, but I really just don't know how to do this here. But I'm gonna get it a little bit more better. But long as I know that I'm starting somewhere, and I heard a person, Miss Williams, when she was talking, I do know. And I am a resident also. And tell Tiff hi also. You all might know my daughter Nikita Thomas. She works with you also.
Yes, Nikita's great, and she told me that she was gonna tell you to come, so that's great. Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's a great point, and I'll just kind of talk a little bit on that. So, being an intergenerational cohort, we definitely do have some folks who are less comfortable with, Zoom technology. So, like, by all means, still apply, and like, we'll just make sure we're going to try to be a little bit more mindful about just being proactive about those sorts of things with the mentor pairings and with other just ongoing support for anyone who needs a little bit more of the technology help. So,
Right.
yeah,
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
All right. But I just wanted to make sure that I was like, I really don't know if
Yeah.
they can hear me or not. But that's fine. And I
Yeah.
know we at the and I know we at the end of the session. So I'll pick back up and get Nikita to kind of like run me through a couple little things. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
And if you're Chicago based, you can also come into the museum and we can talk about anything that would be helpful for supporting you.
okay, that's fine, Dan. I appreciate you. And you have a blessed evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Goldsmith.
All right.
Oh, Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions that come up. Good night. Good night, everyone.